The three main causes of the Holocaust were anti-Semitism, Hitler's rise to power, and fear. Anti-Semitism was a primary cause of the Holocaust because Jews were perceived as a deformity on the body politic. The Jews were also increasingly perceived as a specific problem that needed solving if the nation were to survive. Jewry was also linked to communism, thus making Nazis capable of presenting the Jews as one of the German middle class's greatest fear. Hitler's rise to power was also a primary cause of the Holocaust because he blamed the Jews for the country's defeat. He then became obsessed with the idea of superiority of the pure German race, which was called Aryan. Hitler's final solution was known as the Holocaust, where he created death camps and had mass killing centers within them. Finally, fear was also a primary cause of the Holocaust because Nazi rule was characterized by terror to eliminate political opposition. People who were against the Holocaust were too scared to speak up because if they did, they knew they would get in trouble. The Holocaust was an event where 6 million European Jews were murdered by the Nazi regime during the Second World War. To Hitler and the Nazis, Jews were an inferior race that was a threat to German racial purity and community. Hitler then created the final solution where he deported millions of Jews to death camps throughout Germany and Poland. Millions were forced to work and chosen to go straight to death in the chambers. Camps were then beginning to be liberated by the Allies between 1944 to 1945. The short-term effect of the Holocaust was that 6 million Jews lost their lives and that Hitler and Nazis lost all their power. The medium term was that Israel was created by Jews in the Russian Empire who called for the establishment of a territorial Jewish state after enduring persecution. And finally, the long-term effect was that anti-Semitism still exists today because some people agreed and supported the event of the Holocaust.
How long have you been in here?
I've been in Auschwitz for 4 months, and before that, my family and I were in the ghetto for 1 month.
How are the conditions and how are you treated?
The conditions in Auschwitz are terrible. Where we sleep is one of the worst. It's damp, it has leaky roofs, and it's claustrophobic. The barracks are swarmed with various sorts of vermin and rats. A constant shortage of water for washing and the lack of suitable sanitary facilities aggravate the situation we're in. We work a minimum of 11 hours a day, and we are barely fed.
Do you think your plan will be successful?
So the Jews and I, we're coming up with a plan with other prisoners in the camp to revolt against the Nazi officers. We are going to use shovels, forks, and knives to fight back to win back our freedom. If this plan does not work, the revolters and I would be killed. But if it does work, we would win our freedom and imprison the Nazis.
Do you have any help from the Germans supporting Jews outside the camps?
A couple of the Aryans and Germans had the Jews back and spoke up against Hitler, but the ones who did speak up against him and the government were imprisoned and sent away.
Now that you've escaped, did your plan go as expected and were there any problems throughout the escape?
The plan went really well. The Nazis were taken by surprise and we were able to overtake them. After the revolt, we tied them up and we locked them in the barracks. We then disabled the electric fence and escaped. All of the Jews from Auschwitz who were still alive also escaped. Some officers injured some of the Jews during the revolt, but besides that, there were no problems involving the revolt, and we were successful at that.
The short-term effect of the Jews' revolt against the Nazis and Hitler would be that Hitler steps down as the leader of Germany and that Nazis would lose all their power. The medium-term effect would be that Israel would have never been created and European Jews would stay throughout Europe. And the long-term effect would be that Judaism would have way more people and there would be more Jews living throughout the world.
How did it feel to lose all power after having so much?
It was not too good. especially because we were being persecuted in the Nuremberg trials for crimes against humanity, even though we were just following orders. It's not fair. We were forced to become Nazis by Germany. I didn't want to kill innocent people, so it's not fair that I'm being prosecuted during the trials and facing life in prison.
How's your life now after the uprising?
We were being put on trials and we are most likely going to be executed or sent to jail. We were forced to destroy evidence like the barracks, gas chambers, etc. So it looks like we never did anything. If I could, I would 100% not be a Nazi. I'm innocent.
Do you know any other Nazis that survived?
Many of my friends that were Nazis left the country. They knew they would get in trouble if they stayed. I also know Nazis who are being arrested and persecuted.
Think anything that you did, or do you regret it?
I was just following orders. I wish the event never happened because millions of Jews were killed. Now Nazis are being put on trial.
Thank you. What things did you experience while you were in the camps?
When I was in the camps, many people worked to death or starved. The camps were horrendous. We were crammed into little sleeping arrangements and we were freezing throughout the night. Many people were chosen to go straight to death in the chambers. I was luckily able to work. I just worked and worked every day till I fought for my freedom.
How did you succeed in the uprising?
In the camps, all the Jews got together and talked about how we were going to revolt. We attacked the Nazi officers and overthrew them. All the Jewish prisoners got together and we all left the camps. We went across the country to start a new life.
How did you contribute to the uprising?
In the uprising, I used my shovel as a weapon to attack the officers. It worked very well because none of the officers expected the Jews to revolt. And that's how the other Jews were able to attack different officers.
Experiencing anti-Semitism when you were growing up?
I grew up hating the Jews. In school, we were taught that the Jews were bad and how Hitler would completely help Germany. So when people started becoming Nazis throughout Germany, I also became one.
Did your family try to immigrate in the 1930s? Why didn't you leave?
While many Jews were getting deported, my family was Aryan, so we stayed in Germany. My family and I stayed because at the time we agreed with what Hitler was saying, so my family members and friends became Nazis as well.
What were you hoping to achieve back then?
I was just following orders and I just participated in it because if not, I would get in trouble. And I was kind of glad that the Jews revolted against the Nazis. I didn't like killing innocent people.